Hello, friends. Welcome back to Get Ready with America. My name is SJ, and this is part 2 on the New York City primaries happening on June 22nd. If you missed last week's video about the citywide races for mayor, comptroller, and public advocate, I'll link it in the cards and in the description box. Today, we're talking about the borough presidents, city council, and Manhattan district attorney races. Similar to last week with the mayor's race, I'm going to get pretty in the weeds talking about the borough president's position and touch on most of the races. We'll take a much higher level look at the city council races, not talking about any in particular, but more about the role and how to choose your candidates. Finally, we'll discuss the Manhattan DA's race, which is much more interesting than you initially realize, I promise you. For today's look, I'm paying homage once again to the iconic New York City look generator, the Met Gala, and recreating Jennifer Lopez's 2019 look. Again without the wig, but also again with the fake lashes, because that was such a success last week. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with a quick recap of some things I discussed last week. This year's city elections have some notable differences from years past. First, the primary is taking place in June instead of September, as part of a 2019 state voting bill pushed all primary elections across the state to the same day. Second, the city is using ranked choice voting for the first time. Voters can pick up to 5 candidates and rank them based on their preference. If no candidate reaches 50% of the vote in an initial count of ballots, they'll redistribute the votes from the candidate at the bottom to the voters' second choice candidates and keep doing that until a candidate reaches 50%. Third, there's an early voting period and open absentee mail-in voting for the first time. I'll, of course, touch on these at the end of the video. Borough presidents in New York City are less of a formal governing position and more like a convener-in-chief, as elegantly put by former Manhattan Deputy Borough President Aldrin Bonilla. BPs do not vote on or sign any legislation, but they can introduce legislation to the city council in collaboration with a council member. They manage a budget that is distributed to schools, parks, and nonprofit and community groups within their borough, and they also appoint new members to various community boards. Most interestingly, BPs can play a big role in real estate decisions that go on through the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, which is the process that allows a developer to build outside of the designated zoning, like building a department store in a residential area. BPs can file formal recommendations around projects going through the process that guide the council in negotiations with contractors. Overall, a great BP will be in tune with constituents of their borough, tackling issues with their staff or in coordination with other government agencies, and using this info to shape their agenda when it comes to the legislation, budget allocation, board appointments, and development. 4 of the 5 current borough presidents are leaving office due to term limits. Queens Borough President Donovan Richards is the first Black man to serve in the role and the only incumbent running for a first full term after winning a special election to fill the seat last year. He's facing 2 challengers in the Democratic primary. Elizabeth Crowley is a moderate former city council member who faced Richards for the seat in the special last year, and Jimmy Van Bramer is a city council member who would be the city's first out borough president. Happy Pride, y'all! Also of note about Van Bramer, he was part of the opposition to the Amazon HQ2 opening in New York, which is the kind of development issues a BP would be heavily involved in. Whoever wins the primary will face Thomas Zemek in the general, who's running with the Republican and Conservative parties. If you're not from New York or another state that allows someone to run under more than one party, I'll explain. The process known as electoral fusion allows two or more political parties to list the same candidate on a ballot. All votes for a candidate, regardless under which party, are ultimately pooled together into the final vote total. The most frequent pairings are Democratic candidates also being listed under the Working Families Party and Republican candidates also being listed under the Conservative Party. This is more of a strategic political move than anything else. Minor parties are able to point to their influence in terms of the number of votes a candidate receives under their line, and voters are able to vote for a major candidate that is more viable to win while sticking it to the major party by not voting their line. It's also useful to candidates in a primary situation because they're going to get on the general ballot regardless under the minor party. In the Bronx, former police officer Sammy Rivello is running in the Democratic primary, but he's also the Conservative Party's candidate, so he will definitely be on the general ballot if he loses to one of the other four Democratic candidates. If he does win the primary, he'll show up as both a Democrat and a Conservative, and all votes for him under either party will contribute to his final tally. The only other place where a primary candidate will definitely show up in the general under the Conservative Party is in Staten Island, where Letitia Romero, someone who yelled Heil Hitler when she apparently meant to yell Mein Führer during an anti-lockdown protest, is facing three other candidates in the Republican primary. Staten Island is the only borough holding primaries for both the Democratic and Republican parties, with 5 candidates running on the Democratic ballot. Rounding out the boroughs, Manhattan has 7 candidates vying for the Democratic nomination, while Brooklyn has 13 candidates, as many as the mayoral race. The only polling I've seen done shows 50% of voters are still undecided in Brooklyn, and the ranked poll has the top 5 candidates in order as City Council members Antonio Reynoso, Robert Cornegie, and Joanne Simon, then former hospital administrator Carrie Edwards, and nonprofit executive Kimberly Council. Reynoso was recently endorsed by Brooklyn-born Bernie Sanders for the position, so we'll see if that endorsement seals the deal or at least brings in other useful endorsements for Reynoso. Okay, so City Council. God, where do I start? There are 304 candidates running for 51 seats in New York City Council this year. Candidates are running for 2-year terms instead of 4-year terms due to redistricting after the census. Council members are only able to serve for 2 consecutive terms at a time, and 20 members are not seeking re-election this year due to that term limit. Currently, the council has 48 Democratic members and 3 Republican members, and both party leaders are not seeking re-election, so there will be a lot of change to the council come next year. Just about all of the districts have a contested race, and 38 of them have at least 5 candidates running. The council's main functions are to monitor city agencies, oversee land use decisions, the development stuff I was talking about earlier, create new and amend old city laws, and approve the budget. If you're wondering who you should vote for, these are the candidates you likely have most access to since they are the closest to you, and you can very easily seek them out to learn their positions. And if you can't, don't vote for them. They're ultimately focusing on what is going to reap the best outcomes for your district, So you're likely to hear them talk about a lot of very specific issues in their platform. The vast majority of endorsements for council candidates have come from organizations and unions. So if you need an easy barometer to pick a candidate, check out who's endorsed who. I've linked an article in the description box by nonpartisan digital news platform The City about the role of city council and who's running in every district. It's a good one. This is a good one. Last, but certainly not least, let's talk about the Manhattan District Attorney race. If you're wondering why I'm putting emphasis on that, the current Manhattan DA is one Mr. Cyrus Vance Jr. He who is investigating Trump's finances. He also successfully got Harvey Weinstein convicted. He also declined to charge former International Monetary Fund head Dominique Strauss-Kahn. What I'm getting at is there's a lot of high-profile action in the Manhattan DA's office by nature of who lives in, works in, and visits the borough. Vance decided not to run for re-election this year because he wanted to put more effort into the Trump case, which, good. The position itself is head prosecutor for New York County, aka the Borough of Manhattan, and it oversees a staff of about 500 assistant DAs and prosecutes across 24 units. There are very few limits on what the DA can prosecute, so it's really up to the individual to put a focus on crimes they'd like to crack down on or cast a wide net. There are 8 candidates in the Democratic primary, and this race is not using ranked choice voting since it's actually a state office. This poses a major potential problem for progressive Democrats as there are 4 progressive candidates running and not being able to strategize around how the votes could get evenly tallied to topple a more conservative candidate could mean that a more conservative candidate gets in. That more conservative candidate I'm talking about is Tali Farhadian Weinstein, a law professor and recent general counsel to the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. Weinstein has raised the most money of any in the race, and that has gotten some side-eye because a sizable portion of the money has come from Wall Street and other business interest connections, contributing over $30,000 each. On the other hand, she's been endorsed by former Attorney General Eric Holder, overall badass Gloria Steinem, and former NAACP President Ben Jealous. The other candidates on the more moderate or conservative side all previously worked in the Manhattan DA's office during their career. I'll take it. On the progressive side, the candidates are Tahani Abushi, a human rights attorney whose law career has been shaped by her father's incarceration when she was a child, endorsed by the Working Families Party and Rep. Jamal Bowman, Alvin Bragg, a former chief deputy attorney general for New York State, endorsed by Innocent Project co-founder Peter Neufeld and his old boss, former Manhattan U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara, Dan Court, a current state assemblyman who did work as a court-appointed attorney and pro bono criminal defense attorney, and Eliza Orlins, a public defender with the Legal Aid Society who was ranked by the Five Borough Defenders, a coalition of public defenders in New York City who organize around the systemic injustices of the criminal legal system, as the candidate who would do the least amount of harm as district attorney. And I love that phrasing. There's a lot of coverage on this race, so I don't have any specific references listed below because I took info from a lot of sources. It's easy to frame the position in terms of what's going to happen with Trump's case once a new DA takes over, but the position is so much more complicated than that, especially with the progressive candidates putting a lot of emphasis on decarceration in their campaigns. And I highly suggest you read some articles about the race to help guide your decision. Let's talk about how to vote. New York has closed primary elections, so only registered Democrats and Republicans can vote in their party's primary. New York City is using ranked choice voting for the first time, where voters can pick up to 5 candidates ranked in order of preference, except for the DA, as just mentioned. You don't have to vote for 5 candidates, and you don't even have to vote for more than one, but this is why it's worth it to check out every candidate pretty extensively, especially in the very crowded elections. I've linked the NYC Votes website in the description box so that you can learn more about ranked choice voting and even practice how you're going to rank your candidates. Early in-person voting for all voters has started and runs through Sunday, June 20th. Voting sites are specific to where you live, and you can look that up on New York City's Board of Elections website, linked in the box. Mail-in ballots are also available to all voters, and the deadline to request a ballot is tomorrow, June 15th. Returned ballots must be postmarked by June 22nd and will be accepted up to 7 days after Election Day. If you're voting on the 22nd, polls are open 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. My friend Kylie said that she'll be at the polls first thing on Election Day if she doesn't make it to early vote, so I better get a 6 a.m. selfie from her at her polling place if that happens. I'm very interested in what early voting turnout will be, and I'll insert some stats here with the first couple days of turnout. As always, I have the Board of Elections link in the description box for you to look up your registration status and where to vote. I really hope you can't hear my stomach right now. That'd be embarrassing. And that's it. I'll be back in a couple weeks because of big news. I'm helping out Catherine Garcia's mayoral campaign in its final push. In case you missed it, she received this rousing endorsement from Fran Lebowitz, so I think that's going to get her straight to 50%, frankly. I think my next video will be a fun one instead of an informational one, so stay tuned for that. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel to learn more about voting in other states. If you're enjoying this series and want to show big support, please check out my Patreon in the description box. A special shout out to Alexander Slamilton for the rad end music you're about to hear, and my brother Jimmy Donofrio for the amazing logo now in the corner of my videos. I'll see you next time.